Hello, my name is Jay Pemberge. I'm an instructor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And this video is going to summarize my usage of standards-based grading, or SBG, using the Canvas LMS. To begin, we're going to start off within a Canvas course. This Canvas course right here is classified as my sandbox. It's a sample course that I can use to test out various aspects of Canvas, which if you have, I recommend working with SBG first within your sandbox to test out some of its features. In addition, there are going to be a few key areas that we will use within the navigation pane. So if we come over here to the left-hand side, we have our home button, but we're also going to want to make sure that we have access to assignments, grades, and outcomes. Now the grades is typically in there, but outcomes sometimes does not show up. If you do not see outcomes, you're going to want to go down to settings, over to the navigation pane, and then what you may see is that outcomes is listed somewhere down here in these grayed out items that are not active. So what you want to do is be able to drag them up and place them within your normal pane and then hit save. Now when you come back to your home tab, you should see an updated list of navigation locations. Now, to begin, we're going to go into assignments. So if we look at assignments, so what I've done is I've created a sample assignment, SBG example 1. As with all Canvas assignments, we can come in and we can edit and we can modify the assignment itself. We can assign point values, assign a group to it, and so on. So you're going to need to start with at least an assignment somewhere. Now, the other thing that we can do with this is we can add a rubric, and this is going to be one of our first steps to applying SBG within Canvas. If I add a rubric, one thing that I can do is I can find a pre-existing rubric from one of my other rubrics that I may have used in a course, or I can build one within the actual rubric template right here and label it as SBG example, or whatever name you want to choose at that time. In this case, I'm not as interested in what Canvas classifies as criterion. Instead, what I want to do is I want to delete that and I want to add outcomes. Now, I've generated previously some outcomes. If you just selected find outcome, you may not see anything in here because you have to manually generate them yourselves. So we'll come back to this. So for those outcomes, what you're going to want to do is you want to go back to your navigation pane and you're going to want to select outcomes. Now within the outcome setup, I can do a couple different things. I can create outcome groups and choose a new group name. So the one that I created previously is this trial one. I can create a standalone outcome. I recommend grouping them into clear groups. So we'll come back to that as well. But as long as I know a group, in this case I classify it as trial, I can come in and I can modify and edit. So I've created SBG example outcome 1, but let's say I want to create another one. In this case, we'll classify it as SBG example outcome 2. And I can add in a couple of friendly names or something that summarizes a little bit better than SBG example outcome 2. And I can add a description of what that outcome actually is in the main body right here. And then if I scroll down a little bit further, we start looking at the criterion ratings or the scales. Now, I can modify what that scale is by selecting the edit button. And I can say exceeds expectations. I can change the point values. I can even delete it, or I can add others within here. So I'm going to go ahead with the exceeds expectations, meets, and so on. I'm going to add here, though, below expectation, and we'll make that 2 points. And then we'll alter this last one, does not meet expectations, to well below expectation. And we'll assign it 1 point. Can come back over here to the exceeds, and I can, let's say, change this to 4. You have ultimate control in this area about how you want to actually show this. Going back to the learning outcomes, though, what we can do is we can specify these different scales or criterion ranges. And then also what I can do is specify the mastery that it is, the level of mastery that is achieved at. In this case, it's set to 3 within here, meets expectations. But let's say I wanted mastery to be at 4 or any other level. I could do that and I could alter it. Also within here, we have to look at how we want to calculate a grade based off of mastery. And Canvas groups it into 4 different categories: decaying average, n number of times, most recent score, and highest score. Now, underneath decaying average, you can specify what that split is. In this case, what it's referring to is 65% of that grade is off of the most recent demonstration of that outcome, and 35% is the average of all other outcomes for that specific outcome. And what we can do is we can change that anywhere from 1 to 99%. If we change it to 80, the entire decaying average will update to an 80-20 split in this case. For n number of times, you can actually choose how many times mastery needs to be demonstrated in order for them to start to get a score for that outcome. And you can choose that between 1 and 5, but you cannot exceed 5. The other one is most recent score, which means that no matter what the assignment or level of difficulty it is, you can have that be the most recent demonstration. And then also the highest score, independent of where they earned that mastery outcome for whatever the highest was, whether it was on the first assignment or the last one, it will log that as their absolute final score within Canvas. Now for me, I typically use the decaying average just from a philosophy side. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select save. And once I save, I can come back in here and I can move this outcome to another folder if I had it, or I can edit it, or I can delete it. If I come back to my other ones within here, notice that I still have SBG example outcome 1 that I can do the same thing with. However, previously when I was working with this and trying out a few different options, I called them trial. And I created 4 different ones to illustrate how to use them. However, I assigned them to an assessment or an assignment and actually had somebody complete it so I can see how it showed up on their screen. Once an outcome in this case has been assigned to an assignment and that assignment received a submission, this outcome becomes locked. And in this case, the outcome had been locked for this one, and I can no longer delete this outcome. Now, this isn't for all of Canvas, just for the course. So as soon as you start a new course or a new semester, this will reset itself. And you can import your outcomes, only the ones that you want. However, these will remain. We'll see how this will show up later in the video. Okay, so now that we have at least 2 outcomes that we can work with, SBG example outcome 1 and outcome 2, I'm going to go back to that assignment. And underneath that assignment, I'm going to add the rubric. And I can change my rubric to be my SBG example 1 rubric. And instead of having this basic criteria in here, I'm going to delete that one with the X. And then I'm going to find outcome. A window will pop up to the similar interface that we saw before. And I'm going to select outcome 1. And it'll provide me a description of what that is. And I will import that and confirm that import. And then I can also add another one, outcome 2. And I'll import that one. And I can import as many of the outcomes as I want throughout that. And notice that my points actually update. If I want to use this for grading of the assignment, I'm able to do that as well. Once I'm done and I've added all the outcomes I need, I can create my rubric. It will ask me if I want to change to update that score, and I will say yes. I can always come back in and I can edit it, and I can delete and add them as I need, as I would with the usage of any other rubric within Canvas. Now that I've created that outcome and this rubric, what I'm going to show you and transition to is my gradebook for an existing class so that we can see how these outcomes will show up in that gradebook. Alright, so what I've loaded up here is an existing course with a set of assignments within it, and each one of those assignments is tied to a set of outcomes that I've chosen depending on that assignment. Now, in order to see them and to see how the class is performing with respect to that learning mastery or the SBG, I can go to grades, within that toolbar. And what it pulls up is my traditional gradebook. Now, instead of the traditional gradebook, we want to see those standards-based grading ones or the learning mastery outcomes items. So I'll select learning mastery. And it'll look fairly similar. I'll see my student name, and then across the top, I'll see learning outcomes for each one of those items. Now, if you notice, these learning outcomes are blank. These are ones that I previously created that I decided that I wasn't going to use, and I actually assigned them to the first assignment, and I had to change them later. Unfortunately, it will not remove from this learning mastery gradebook. But no points or anything else are added. They're just left blank because I ended up deleting them anyhow. And you can see that I created several. This is one reason why I recommend using that sandbox in order to flesh out what you need, have a peer review it. If you have a grader, have them review it as well, just to ensure that there's consistency of what you want and you're not trying to change it afterwards. Your students also see these blank outcomes as well. Now, once I finally figured out what I was doing in that respect and I cleaned it up, I actually generated my outcomes, and this is what it will look like when you try to review those outcomes. So I can see for each one of my outcomes for each student where they are, and it's color coded, which is very easy to see and identify problems within the course or students that are having difficulty. So green is either exceeds or meets mastery, yellow is near mastery, and the red is well below mastery. So if I look here, I can see that for dimensioning problems, my class is struggling. They're near mastery. And I can look at that distribution. In this case, a majority of the class is partially achieved for that outcome, and they're still having difficulty with it. For this other outcome, I can see a much different spread. So I can use this information to guide my own instruction. Also, what I can do is I can look at individual student progress, and those with a highlighted red or a considerable amount of yellow, I can see where they're struggling and target help to them with respect to my course. Now, if I want to look at individual grades or an individual perspective of how a student is achieving a specific outcome, I can click on that individual tab, and within here I see individual assignments and learning mastery. Once again, I'm going to select learning mastery, and from here I can select a student. It's going to be grayed out for confidentiality, but I'm going to select one student within that list. And if I come down to student information, you'll see their name highlighted in blue, and I can select that as well. Now, once it transitions to them, you'll see it show up as the traditional assignments, and I can see their individual scores for each one of those assignments. But what I'm more interested in is this learning mastery. And notice that my 3 groups of outcomes are in here that I ended up not using. And then for the other one, I have the EGR 120 course outcomes, and these are the ones that I've been using. So in this case, 22 out of the 23 course outcomes have been demonstrated by the student. When I open that up, I can see that each one of those outcomes have, in this case, check marks, which means that they've met mastery, or near mastery in this case. And if I want to look at specific aspects of their progress, I can click on that to look at the trend on how they've been doing recently. To see if there's any indication on whether or not they're beginning to struggle in the course on a specific topic. Now I can go back to my grades, and once I'm back in my gradebook, I'll go back to my default gradebook, and I'm still underneath learning mastery. But what I can also do with this is I can export all of these numbers, even the ones that don't have any. And if I export, it will show up as a standard.csv, and I can see these numbers. And these numbers represent, in my case, the decaying average, the 65-35. And that's how they're getting 3.8 out of 3, and so on, 2.39 out of 3. So that I could see exactly how that final score is, but for each outcome. So this is going to conclude my video of using SBG within Canvas. If you have any questions, I recommend that you do head to the standards-based grading hub for any additional information. Thank you very much and have a good day.